Let me show you how you can use some pretty basic and cool effects and techniques to create a really cool and ominous and thick vocal sound that you can use for narration purposes for, say, a concept album or some kind of cool voiceover for a cinematic trailer or something like that. What's going on, everyone? Matt, aka Martiln here. In case you missed it, I recently released a big and pretty special project to me called REALMS. It's a transmedial project that brings together world building, storytelling, and music all together into this one cool, big project. If you want to find out more about REALMS, you can check it out in the link in the description below, or there'll be a card on the screen that you can click as well. But today I thought it'd be a really cool idea to show you the process that I use to create the narration that can be heard throughout the EP released as part of the REALMS project. If you haven't heard it yet, this is what it sounds like.
REALMS. Pockets of existence.
So today we're going to jump into Ableton Live and I'm going to break down the process and techniques that I used to create this sound and also talk about the concepts and thinking behind it so that you can take those and apply them in your own sessions to create your own unique narration voice. Before we get into that though, if you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you really enjoy this video and want to support me in making more content like this, you can head over to my Buy Me a Coffee page. You'll find the link down in the description, and there you'll be able to either just send me a one-off donation support, or you'll be able to sign up to become a member to get some really, really cool things. You'll also find the link to the REALMS Buy Me a Coffee page down in the description as well. So if you're interested in REALMS and want to support that project, you can find that there as well. But with that all said, without any further ado, let's dive into Ableton Live and show you how I created that really cool narration sound. So here we are inside of Ableton Live. Now, this is not the session that I used to create this narration sound, but I have just imported the tracks from the session that I did use along with all the processing and stuff as well. So this top track here is actually just the dry vocal performance. So this is just the dry recording of me with no effects or processing or alteration done to these clips at all. And this is what that sounds like.
REALMS. Pockets of existence.
So as you can hear, it's just pretty dry. It's just me speaking into a microphone. It's a different microphone to this one. It's a condenser mic that I'm using to record this voice here for the narration. But really, really simple. I just put on a voice and that's kind of what I used as the basis for the whole narration sound. Now here, in this group below here is all the different layers that I've used to create that voice. And as you can see, there are actually only 3 different layers. And in fact, the processing on them isn't even that crazy. So first off, the thing I needed to think about was how I wanted this voice to sound. I knew I wanted it to sound ominous, deep, and kind of otherworldly. So I knew that I wanted to re-pitch it. So what I did, I took that entire vocal performance and I just brought it onto a new track, or I just used the original one, actually, to be perfectly honest. And I just selected all of it after I'd kind of laid it out. And I just pitched down all of the clips here. So I just went into the clip view. I just selected all of them, hit Shift and Tab on my keyboard, and then I just used the transpose control of the clips here, made sure they were warped, used the transpose control of the clip here to drag it down 12 semitones. I made sure it was on Complex Pro because I also want to control over the formants. And without any processing, this is what that sounded like.
REALMS.
So it doesn't necessarily sound the best, and if we play around with the formants, you can hear what those are actually doing to the sound as well.
Pockets of existence.
So you can hear when the formants are really low like that, it actually becomes a little bit hard to hear what the voice is actually saying. So I wanted to keep the formants up kind of high so that I could actually hear what the voice was saying. I wanted the words to be intelligible and understandable. I didn't want it to just be this kind of like muffled sound. So I made sure to keep the formants high at around 82-ish, I think is what I settled on. I didn't play around with the envelope or anything at all, but playing around with the formants in this particular instance was a really, really useful thing to do. Once I had come up with that pitch, what I then did is started just basically processing this vocal take. So if I open up the track and check out the processing that I've got on here, I've just grouped them all together into this chain right here. And actually, although it might look like there's a lot going on, there's really not a huge amount. If I turn on this vocal chain, this is what it ends up sounding like.
REALMS.
Without it.
REALMS.
So really it's just making it a little bit clearer, and of course it's bringing up the volume of it as well. If I just go into here, I have two instances of Nectar, isotope Nectar. And this first instance, all it's actually doing is just using the automatic leveler in here, which is basically just essentially acting like a kind of pre-compressor almost. It's just leveling out the vocals by using some volume automation, automatic level detection, so that it's a consistent volume, so that when I do apply compression and stuff later on, it's just a little bit better and it's a little bit more consistent across the whole performance. Then I have just a really standard high pass filter here on the EQ, some peak compression here, some pretty soft compression, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that's actually being compressed that much through this compressor.
Pockets of existence.
It's really only hitting about 2 decibels of gain reduction. And then I'm going to another instance of Nectar, and all this is doing is using a de-esser, because if you listen to the original vocal performance, it was pretty essy. It had some harsh sibilant frequencies. So I just used a de-esser to tame them. And I like Nectar's de-esser just because it's really, really simple and easy to use. I then used some OTT. Obviously, OTT is really good for this type of voice. If you don't know what OTT is, basically it's a mixture of downwards and upwards compression that's really, really, really insane, that just squashes the sound into a very small dynamic range across multiple frequency bands. In this case, I did edit some of the settings on the OTT. I changed some of the amounts and some of the thresholds and stuff of the different bands, but overall just an OTT with some kind of extra processing there. And the reason I did this is because I wanted to bring all of the levels up together. I wanted this to be really squashed and really hugely consistent. I then have a gate after this. Really, I probably should have had the gate beforehand. I don't know why I have the gate afterwards, but there you go. The gate is before it, and that's just making sure that all of these kind of places in the middle here where there's all these background noise and stuff, that's just getting cut out by this gate. Again, that probably should have happened before the OTT, before any of the compression, but hey, it's there afterwards and it sounds pretty fine as is. Then I have a really basic kind of tonal shaping EQ going on right here. This is just, again, carving out some of that low end and just bringing up some of those high frequencies and just reducing a little bit of that kind of mid-range, low mid-range of frequencies there as well, just to kind of clean up the sound a little bit. So here's what the voice sounds like with the EQ.
Pockets of existence.
And then without the EQ.
Pockets of existence.
Here it's just a little bit kind of boomy, I guess, without the EQ on. And then is probably the secret sauce of this particular part of the processing, which is iZotope's Vocal Doubler plugin. Now, this plugin is free. It's a fantastic plugin. If you don't have it, I highly recommend downloading it. But basically what it does is it creates a fake kind of duplicate of your track, whatever you're running into it, generally vocals, but you can use it on pretty much anything. And it gives you a few different parameters and controls as to how these duplicates are going to be blended in with the original signal, as well as kind of like a dry wet as well with this amount control. Now I've left it at fully wet, but what we're going to do, if I just turn this off, have a listen to what it sounds like without this vocal doubler on.
Pockets of existence.
And now I'm going to turn it back on and have a listen to the difference.
Pockets of existence.
By having the separation on here up really, really high and the variation up quite high as well, you basically get this almost like a slap back effect and this really wide sounding voice. Now, in this particular instance, these settings worked really well. Sometimes in, say, a song setting where you don't want a really super affected voice, you might want to dial back the amount a little bit. But for this particular kind of voice and this particular kind of effect, I really wanted this wide, massive vocal sound. And that's all the processing that I did on this individual vocal kind of track here. But you will notice I have actually doubled it twice. Now, with these doubles, I'm actually running them all through the exact same processing that I was running this first vocal through. But I have done something slightly different to them to create a much thicker, wider, larger sounding vocal. So if, for instance, on this second layer here, I open up this effect racks, you'll see that it's literally the exact same processing. I haven't actually changed anything. I've just copied over the entire effects chain and just pasted it onto this track. So I'm just going to turn that on. I'm going to do that for the other track as well. But where the difference comes into it is actually in the processing and transposing of the clips. So instead of tuning these down 12 semitones, if I select them all, hold Shift and Tab, we can see that I've actually tuned them down 5 semitones. Now, again, I've played around with the formants a little bit here as well, but what this has done is created a different kind of layer that sounds, well, different enough, but once we can blend it in there, it actually sounds really, really cool. I'm actually just going to unpan this and then I'll repan it so you can hear what this actually sounds like.
Realms. Pockets of existence.
So that's what our kind of 5 semitone version sounds like, -5 semitone version. This is what our -12 semitone version sounds like, which was the original layer.
Pockets of existence.
This is the -5 again.
Pockets of existence.
So because we've played around with the formants of the different tracks there, they actually don't have too much of a different or really obvious difference in their pitch, which means they're going to layer really, really well. And then I did this same thing again. I'm just going to repan that all the way to the left because that's where it was. And instead of panning it or turning it down -5 semitones, I actually turned this new one down 2 semitones. So we have one that's just a really low sound, one that's a little bit higher, and one that's a little bit higher than that again. So this is what the -2 semitone version sounds like.
Pockets of existence.
So you can hear, again, playing around with the formants and stuff like that, it actually sounds quite interesting and different, especially coming from what it was originally, which was this.
Pockets of existence.
So we have this version.
Pockets of existence.
We have this version.
Pockets of existence.
And we have this version.
Pockets of existence.
So we've got these 3 different layers that then what I did, I kept that initial layer centered, panned the -5 semitones layer all the way to the left and the -2 semitones layer all the way to the right. And that created this really wide and thick vocal sound, which if I unmute these tracks and solo the group is what it sounds like.
Pockets of existence.
So because this isn't actually pitched material, it's spoken word, I didn't actually have any rhyme or reason behind -5 and -2 semitones. I just kind of picked what sounded cool. I played around with the transposition settings and I knew I wanted this big, rich, thick, dense vocal sound that I wanted it to sound like multiple people were saying the same thing. So I had them at these different pitch levels. And that's what led to this. You could actually even add in more layers if you wanted to at different pitches to create a much denser vocal sound. But just be really, really careful if you're having things too close in pitch value because you will get some odd sounds if you're having things that are a little bit too close in terms of like -1 semitone or 1 semitone apart kind of thing. And then I grouped all of these together into this narrator track and just applied some bus processing to them. This bus processing, again, really, really simple. All I did, if I turn this on, we'll see that we're just at a slight boost here in the kind of low mid-range on our EQ and added some saturation because I wanted to give it a little bit more grit. And then I just added some spatial effects. So I have 1 delay, 2 delay. This delay here is actually being automated on the send amount. A reverb, another reverb, which is sidechained, and then another reverb followed by some compression. So basically I've applied all these spatial effects to it, and then I wanted all those spatial effects to sound really, really upfront and kind of combined with the vocal sound. So what I did is just apply compression after all of these spatial effects had happened. So let me just play you now what this sounds like with all these effects going on, and then I can break down what each are doing one by one.
Pockets of existence.
Cool. So again, just a little bit of a low mood boost in the EQ, a little bit of saturation. I like this a bit warmer preset on the Ableton Saturator that I just tweaked a little bit. And then I have my custom kind of delay return rack here, which is another video that I did on that a while ago. I'll link it in the description or as a card or something like that. And then, as I mentioned, this delay return rack here, which is having it send amount automated. So if I open up my automation, you can see that right at the end, that's where this automation comes in, so that this last word that just gets delayed out quite a bit. And that's a really, really fast, kind of almost slapback fluttery delay. I'm using REALM for my reverb here. This is Native Instruments Realm. If you don't know, it's a really, really cool reverb plugin. So this is the main reverb that is going on here, which with the delay sounds like this.
Story begins in a
So it's just kind of giving a little bit of space to the vocal there. And then I have this extra reverb going on here, another instance of Realm with a different reverb algorithm going on. But this is much of a bigger reverb, basically, a much kind of more intense reverb. And what I'm actually doing with this one is sidechaining this reverb to the dry vocal performance so that the reverb kind of swells in after the dry vocal comes out. And basically the reason I did this is because I wanted the vocal to still, again, be intelligible. You need to be able to hear what the voice is saying, but I also wanted this really massive vocal effect going on. I might do a video on this at some point in the future, but if you don't understand the process, basically the reverb sound is being ducked, turned down whenever the dry vocal is coming through. And that's what I'm doing here with this audio effect rack. And then again, here we just have hybrid reverb, which is only being turned up at the end right here, just for this last little word, and then all being glued together by this glue compression. And then all together, it sounds like this.
pockets of existence.
And to be perfectly honest, it doesn't even look like that compressor is actually doing a whole lot. It should be doing more than it is, but clearly I just didn't quite use it as much as I should have. Maybe in the original session it was actually being a little bit more compressed, or I just used it as a really, really light form of compression, or I potentially even used it just to bring up the gain a little bit and perhaps clip it on the other side. But yeah, that is how I went about creating this really, really cool vocal sound that you can hear throughout the entirety of my EP Act 1, A New Traveler, as part of the Realms project. It's a really simple process. It's a really experimental process. It's just about processing the voice in kind of interesting ways, but also trying to make sure that it's still intelligible at every single point of the process. So if you play around with some of the concepts that I've taught and shown in this video, I'm sure you'll be able to come up with something really cool as well. So that is it for this video. As I mentioned at the start of the video, if you really enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you really like the sound that I've created, make sure to check out Realms. I'll link it down in the description below, where you can stream it on Spotify, or you can head to the Realms website to check out the entire experience in its entirety. I'm going to be releasing some track breakdowns of the Realms tracks from that Act 1, A New Traveler EP over the next month or little while. So stay tuned for them. But otherwise, I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see all of you in the next video.